right, welcome in. This morning, we are talking Heroic Disgrace with the author Scott Box. And yeah, man, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. It snowed.
It did snow.
It snowed. Cool thing with the snow here in Central Oregon is that most of the time, not always, but you can use a broom.
Yeah, broom it off. If it's dry. If it's dry,
it's dry, which is typical. I know last night it was a little wet, but yeah, anyway,
it was dry. You know what comes in dry is Kryptonite 2.0. That's what we're going to talk today.
We're jumping right in.
Do you remember this? Do you remember this? You wrote this many moons ago? Not really. What do you think? Kryptonite 2.0, we're going to talk about failure and how do our failures try to steal from our heroism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's...
It's tricky. This is tough.
This, for me, the issue, the primary issue that I was dealing with was we dealt with the first one this last time, which had to do with parent pleasing.
Absolutely.
This was my second kryptonite was heroic fraud. That's what I titled it, heroic fraud, and this idea that I was a fraud. I was too broken to be the hero, and I was too sinful to be the worshiper, and I didn't know what to do with that.
Okay, so in Kryptonite 2, you talk about being, and it's 2.0, there's 2.0, 2.1, because we talked about the parent pleasing, as you say, but on the other side of this, as a young man, what was a failure in your life? What was a loss, let's say, that you experienced that took away from the hero you wanted to be?
When I decided to stop playing baseball was that time. When I lost baseball because it was my identity, was the first time that I experienced that sense of loss, if that's what you're talking about.
So this is, this is important, and that does have to do with what I want our audience to get at. I mean, I want to ask the question that they're asking is like, if I am looking at my life, watching right now, am looking at my life, what is a loss? What is it something that makes me feel like a villain, although I'm really doing everything I can to be heroic? And I think finding your identity. Now, as Christians, obviously, our identity can be in the Lord. It can be in God. It can be in our understanding of the Scriptures. It can be our understanding of the history. It can be our understanding of the future. But our identity is not, it can't be so like heavenly minded, we're no earthly good. We've heard this before, right? And if your identity was baseball, what happens when you become a youth worship leader? And what age was that? Like you talk about that in Kryptonite 2. What age bout was that? And when you came face to face with having to be up in front of people and leading them in worship, but just like everyone else in the whole world, you're dealing with overcoming many different sin.
Sure.
Like issues in your life, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, how did you handle that as that coming into that worship leader role?
Yeah, that was a very interesting season. I remember I had a girlfriend, and got the boyfriend-girlfriend thing. You're trying to not go too far and all of that stuff, and then and that would have been Saturday night, and then Sunday morning you're leading music.
Of course, yeah.
And
We've all been there.
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and you bring that in to those experiences, and there were times where, thank God, I was very fortunate to have maintain boundaries with a girlfriend, but come on. I mean, there's always those things that you struggle with, and you don't come to, or I struggled to come to leading worship, if you will, completely pure.
Right? So if you're so perfect, you don't need Jesus. So let's get to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
We think this a lot. I mean, we all think this. If we can get rid of every sin in our life on our own.
But can you imagine how fraudulent that might have felt for somebody who felt like me, who felt like I was missing. I was not a bad kid.
Exactly.
But I felt like a fraud because I wasn't perfect. It's twisted.
So
it's
right,
a twisted
and that's
thing,
the
but-
attack. That's the devil's attack. Obviously, we can say that all the time, putting doubt in our minds about our ministry, about our personality, about our things that some people might think are a flaw, but our identity. What you're talking about here, a loss to me. So if we take this on, a loss would be if you let those thoughts of your sin overwhelm your ability to lead worship and you quit leading worship.
Right.
Then who's going to step up that's perfect? We need a perfect person because right? It's not going to happen. So
brutal,
you
I
would
know.
see that as a loss, let's say, if you were to quit. Okay. But you didn't quit. What happened?
Wow, man, good work. I didn't quit because I believed that I had the opportunity to refine my skills. But I also believe I also believed that I could become more perfect.
Here we are.
Here we are. I mean, the mess. It never really got fixed.
Wait, so the more worship you led, the less villain you would feel or be? Right? I mean, because you're a hero to somebody when you're up there with a guitar. People see
Right.
this as you're in the limelight or whatever.
Yeah.
As a worship leader, we've both been there. No, it's nerve-wracking. You feel like a failure up there. I can't sing. I can't play.
Oh.
How am I going to do this? But meanwhile, some other people are like, oh my gosh, you're the best. No.
It
it's
makes
like,
no sense.
It's so
It
difficult.
makes no sense.
It's so difficult.
Yeah.
But how do you carry this heroism through that and maintain, hey, yeah, I can do this. That thought of I can push through the doubt that I have.
Well, there's that old saying of "if not me, then who?"
Absolutely.
And I've believed that. I believed that I could be. I believed that I could be kind of a Navy SEAL of,
Nice.
you know, I knew I was a workman in that regard. Like I knew that I knew that I wasn't the best guitar player. I knew I wasn't the best singer. I knew I wasn't the best leader, but I knew I had to do it. I knew I had the skill, and I knew that there were other people, a lot of people, who didn't have what I had.
Right.
And so I felt a responsibility to step up and then to maintain it, even when the cost, I mean, it just sounds like even when the cost was really high emotionally,
Right.
which it was every time, for
Every
the
time.
record.
Every time.
Because getting up there was nerve-wracking. To this day, I'm 45. To this day, getting up and leading music in front of a crowd, it
It's
wrecks
hard,
me.
right? I mean, I think everyone
And
no
people
matter-
wouldn't even
right,
think
they
that.
don't get they don't think you have stage fright because you just got to do it, right?
Yeah.
But in Kryptonite 2, you talk about feeling like you had failed in certain aspects of your life, and you kind of push those aside to maintain the heroic, like manly, I can take on the world thing. Well, what happens when you're older? Let's say, like, if you go through a loss, like getting fired, or like for anyone out there who's like going through something really difficult, like say a personal like failure in their life, like maybe they let down their family in some way, they let down their kids in some way, or their wife. How can we take that failure and not just say, oh no, that didn't happen, I'm still a hero? How can we actually just say, wait, a hero just fights through that?
Right.
They don't just give up, because that's all that is, stepping off stage, leading worship. You step off stage, and if you quit, you're giving up.
Yeah.
And in a way, the villain inside of you won. How do you continue being a hero?
So I finally have an answer for that. I didn't for a long time. So I won't claim to have got there until now.
Okay.
Because it's really easy to get into revisionist history,
Right.
when you're
Of
reflecting
course.
on your past.
I didn't doubt myself, never.
Yeah,
Right.
it would be very easy for me to do that, and I want to be honest that anyway. It starts with a redefinition of what heroism is,
Thank you.
and that is ultimately what I realized and it really only happened when I stepped away from the platform. So I taken the last 2.5, 3 years, and I've, with very few exceptions, like less than 3 or 4 times, have I led music on a Sunday or for special events. But I knew that I had to redefine what heroism was, and I only got there in the last season of my life. And that definition of heroism can only be found in Jesus Christ, period. Amen. He took what I believed was heroism and he flipped it upside down.
Right.
He took this idea of heroism has always had an aspect of crushing another person in order to get up and above. That's the ancient perspective of what heroism was. Now,
you have to beat someone.
Yeah, you have to beat somebody.
Or thing.
And Western culture, because of the Christian influence, has sprinkled in, the altruistic stuff. But boy, heroism, Jesus changed what heroism was from truly service or being served to serving.
Absolutely, yeah.
As an example.
So, I mean, we have our World War II veterans that are absolute heroes. Now, did they maybe kill the most people in battle? Probably not. Did they survive battle? Yeah. Did some of them die in battle? Yeah. So why are they still our heroes if they didn't achieve the greatest of goals of wiping out everyone and winning the war single-handedly, like Rambo situation, right? But they're our heroes because they fought and they continued fighting. They didn't give up and run.
Sure.
We can see that in so many movies. The guy that runs away, you're like, what, a coward? How is this?
Yeah.
But we've been there. We've been in those situations where sometimes the best way to stay alive is to run away for a minute, right? Regain some strength, realize, hey, this thing was harder to beat than I thought it would be. I need more prayer. I need maybe fasting. I need obviously to be in the Word. I need God's help to get through this thing in my life, whatever this is.
Right.
So that's where I really wanted to understand just, where some of those losses in your life, instead of covering them up, maybe running to the Father in these situations. And I mean, obviously that's number one, but also realizing that a true hero keeps fighting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the goal in this.
Well, right? A true hero never stops serving. A true hero can come off, like you're explaining, can come off the front line because they got their ass kicked.
Right.
And if they don't want to, at some point, a hero's going to die. I mean, the hero,
Absolutely.
and I've learned that, and yet the glory of the Christian ethic is that we will give and give until we die.
Right.
That's the beauty of the whole thing. And we give not just to the physical, but we give to the mental and the spiritual. It is the wholeness of the human that we're supposed to give to. And Jesus modeled that.
Yeah.
And that's where, when I step back and I think, oh man, I didn't lose much growing up.
Right.
I didn't. Right. But it wasn't until later when I realized that when I thought it wasn't until later that I thought and connected that losing meant villainy. And that was danger zone for me
absolutely.
Because that's not true.
Right.
It's just not true.
Right.
And so in contrast, I thought winning meant heroism. Then.
Right.
So I couldn't lose because I wouldn't be a hero.
Right.
So Jesus changed all that.
Absolutely.
He changed it, and I've understood now the necessity of helping others walk through that process, but also recognize that being on the front lines is worth it. And this is why when you and I talk about burnout, I struggle with that entire concept ultimately because I don't think it exists. You can get your butt kicked and you have to come off the front line, but you are designed to go right back.
Right, exactly.
And so that's true heroism. That's what I've learned.
Now you say this, and I kind of am thinking all of a sudden, like, how in a real world situation are any of our friends watching saying, man, like how am I on the front line? Well, at your job, in your school, with your family, wherever this is, in the front line of, watching the things that you say. Number one, obviously, this is a battle for a lot of us, right? We want to say what just jumps out of our mouth, which comes from our heart, by the way, right? And we know that the first thing that we can do is be encouraging. We can lift up instead of tearing down. This has been a big thing for me to overcome because I'm inherently negative. That's the sin built into me, right? I want to be like, oh yeah, you suck at this or whatever. Let me just do it. But instead, like I've learned, especially with kids, you laugh.
No, glass half full
kids,
versus half empty.
Right.
I got you.
But encouraging our kids instead of being like, oh, let me just do it.
Yeah.
Making our kids fight through some things, or coworkers instead of being like, oh, you don't know how to do this. Like, hey, here's a trick I had that like helped me to do better at this task or whatever. And trying to encourage through that.
Yeah.
I think that's a way we can serve and in a way be heroic. Because I'm thinking of that as a leader in a worship leader situation. You're leading people into worship. That is a servanthood right there because you ultimately want the audience to worship with you.
Yeah.
Right?
You want to call them into that. That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, in light of that, in light of a day-to-day thing we can do to serve, do you have any final thoughts on how we can like get rid of this kryptonite in our lives of doubt, maybe?
Yeah. So I was watching Survivor.
Nice.
There's a backlog of seasons and seasons of Survivor.
You've been watching this since you were 10 then, right? It's forever. It's been going on since Simpsons.
It's been 20 years. Yeah, it's been a long time. Shorter than Simpsons. Simpsons has been around a long time.
Man.
But there was, there's one individual who has taken it upon himself to be father figure to somebody who's 2 years younger than him.
Okay.
That type of thing. And he's going to be his dad to her and call her out on everything.
Right, of course.
And like, dude, you're getting voted off the.
Yeah,
you're getting
out.
voted off. You don't see it, but it's that's not service.
Right.
That's just being an arrogant punk.
Yeah.
And Christian can be arrogant punks, and that's what I've got a radar for that big time.
Right.
And
no, we're not supposed to be, but we can be, and we don't mean to be. Right.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
We don't get to be arrogant punks.
No, you should not be.
Right. But we
Jesus modeled a unique thing though, where he wasn't an arrogant punk, but he modeled service and truth in such a magnificent way.
With authority.
Delivering love with such powerful authority.
Yeah.
This is I know I'm not answering your question, but this idea
I just want your final thought.
The final thought is simply that we have a model for what true heroism is.
Yes.
And we can get stuck behind, like we can get stuck in traffic of our own creating of what it means to be a hero because culture's thrown it on, or like I've talked about, I grabbed and created Frankenstein's monster myself of what a hero was. And at the end of the day, the only place to find true heroism is Jesus Christ, and a friendship with him is the only way you get there. It's the only way that the traffic clears.
Love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Clearing traffic. Bringing traffic to heroicdisgrace.com. You can check us out at all the social media outlets, whatever you're into, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Also, Worship Hero. You can check us out there. Scott's book, by the way, you've been doing some interviews lately. Yeah. So look for those. Those are going to be out and about by some pretty amazing interviewers, by the way. So we want to say thank you to them as well. Thank you. Like, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Follow us because we're just trying to do something for you guys. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.